Hey there, it's Rachel with Journey Back Quilts. Today we're going to be making one of my favorite quilt blocks, the Aunt Rachel's quilt block. Let's get started. To make this quilt block, you're going to need several half square triangles, which is what we've been making in the previous lessons. We made 4 9-patch squares with our half square triangles in the last lesson. And we also made birds and air block, but we're going to start with these 9 patches. So what we're going to do is make a pinwheel in the center. So you can see they're all exactly the same. They're just rotated differently, okay? So just for reference, let's see them all stacked together the same direction. Okay, so I've got all my blues pointed down. I'm going to take this first one and rotate it one direction. So I'm actually going to take all 3 just so that I can move through them all as I go. Okay, so we've got a little bit of movement here. We've got this going up to this. I'm going to take these next 2 and rotate them one direction. And then the last one direction. And look at that. Right in the center, you can see this pinwheel right here. Isn't that cool? So all we're going to do is make a giant 4-patch with these blocks. So we're going to sew these 2 together and these 2 together. We'll iron the seams opposite so we can nest the seam and then sew them together. Let's take them to the sewing machine and put these together. Okay, just making sure they're going the right direction, right sides together. And we do want our seams to stack. So if you opened your seams like we did in the last lesson, then those seams should be stacked right on top of each other, and you should see the slit of the seam going right through each other. I'm going to start with my leader fabric again, since we have so many stacked bulkier seams right there. Okay, just double checking my seams are where I want them. And then I'm just going to stop right here and double check this one before I continue to sew. Get it stacked where I want it to be. Line up those raw edges. And I just hang onto it with my finger. I'm not pulling on it or pushing on it. I'm just holding it so it stays in place. You can use pins if you would like, just to pin everything first. And that would work just great too. And I'm just going to chain piece these. So again, right sides together. Make sure those seams are getting stacked or nested, depending on where your seams are going. Okay, let's take these to the ironing board. Just lay them back out real quick. Make sure that you have them going the right direction to make your pinwheel. So you should have this little pinwheel here in the center. So one side we want to iron towards the left and one side we want to iron towards the right. So I'm just going to flip this one around, and that way we can iron both of them going towards the left. It's easier being right-handed to iron it that way. If you're left-handed, you'll do it the opposite direction. Oh, I love how these are turning out. We've got perfect little points right there. So just lift up the left hand block so that that seam is resting on the ironing board. So when you push it over, your fabric is going to lay on top of that seam. Looks so good. Now just remember to flip that other block back the way it was, lay it back out, make sure it's going in a pinwheel. You should see a pinwheel right here in the center. And this whole block is going towards the bottom left, and then the bottom right, then the top right, and the top left. See how it just keeps rotating? Okay, now we're going to put those together. Now this is a little bit more seams to manage, so if you want to pin it, that might be a safe bet. So I'm going to nest those middle seams first. And I just put my pins in horizontally. Now I'm going to take these out as I get close to them, but they'll just help hold it in place so that hopefully everything will stay nice and nested. Okay, let's take it to the sewing machine. I'm just double checking that first one, making sure it's nested, then getting those raw edges lined up. And we're actually starting in a nice smooth piece of fabric, not in one of these bumpy seams. So we don't need the leader fabric this time. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Let's go see how it irons out. I just want to double check it real quick before I iron those seams open. See if all of my points are matching up pretty well, and they are. Yay! Love when that happens. Okay, so I'm just going to open that seam with my finger first, and then use the nose of the iron to wiggle in there. As you can see, I kind of lifted it up as it was going over these seams so that it stayed flat. So it just takes a little maneuvering of wiggle, wiggle. Opening it up with your finger, especially right there where all those seams meet. There's so much bulk. So we're going to iron that flat. And there we go. We have the middle of our Aunt Rachel quilt star all ready to go. Now we need to grab those birds and air block so we can put them on the sides. You're also going to need a background 9.5-inch square, 4 of these for the corners. So you're going to have 4 up in the corners, and I'm just going to lay out 2 of the sides so you can see it. This is going to finish at 36 inches square. So we've got those 2 at the top, and then we need 2 of our birds and air block going the opposite direction. We've got one with the light blue background and one with the dark blue. And so you can see that the dark blue is going to match up with the dark blue going the same direction. See how that half square triangle is going the same direction as this one? And then this one is going the same direction as this one. Isn't that cool? So our pinwheel is just coming out into the star points. Same thing with the sides of the block. This is going the same direction as this block here. And then this block is going to go the same direction as this one. So you can see these are going the same direction here. And then this comes together to a point. Isn't that cool? So we've got our star points coming together, and we're going to do that on 2 sides. So first I'm going to sew all of these together in pairs. So as you can see, if you put them on top of each other, they're all going the same direction. So if you want to just stack all 4 of them going the same way, you'll know exactly the layout they're supposed to be. Okay, so we'll sew all of these together in pairs of 2, and then 2 of them will sew the white backgrounds on the edges. So let's take all of these over to the sewing machine. And I'm going to start with my birds and air blocks, putting them right sides together, matching up those raw edges. And this seam here in the middle should be stacked on top of each other pretty well, because those points are going to match right up. And sew them together at a 1/4 inch seam. And you can just chain piece all of these. Now that we have all of these sewn in pairs of 2, we're going to set 2 of those aside, and the other 2 we're going to put the white backgrounds on both sides of this block. Okay, for our birds and air blocks, I'm going to open this seam. In the center of everything. But on the outside corners where our background 9.5 inch squares are, I'm going to iron those in towards the birds and air block. That way we'll be able to nest our seams with these outside blocks. Okay, with our center pinwheel, we can put our side blocks on. Because this is a little large and there's so many seams to match up, it is a good idea to pin each of those seams, or put a wonder clip there or something to help you hold all of those seams in place. And some of these seams are not going to nest because some of them we opened and some of them we pressed to the side. And that's okay. If they are stacking on top of each other, just do the best you can to get them to match up. And I'm going to go ahead and flip it around and do the other side as well, so that we can sew both of these seams down at the same time. See how I roll the top piece back so I can line up this seam line with that seam line? That way when I lay it back down, it's more likely to be stacked on top of where it should be than if I just try to eyeball it. Especially with those seams that are open or stacked. If they're not nesting in place, it's a great tool to be able to just roll it back, take a peek, see if they're lined up. Also notice that I started in the center and worked my way towards the outside edges. Just getting in the habit of doing it that way is helpful, so that when you get a big huge border or something that you're going to put on really long rows with, you're just going to start in that center and work your way out. That way you don't accidentally misalign things. Just make sure you know where your center is. All right, let's go sew these 2 lines down. Also, you can notice that I've lifted my foot often to help those seams stay flat when needed, so that the foot isn't pushing them and wrinkling them over. And I'm pausing a lot. After every seam that I pass, I pause, readjust, pause, readjust. and not just fly through the seam. That way we make sure not to cut off any of our points if we can help it. All right, let's go iron these two. And I'm going to iron them away from the center. If you would like to open your seam so you have a little bit less bulk in your fabric, that's fine too. But I am a lazy ironer and I would rather just get it over with. So I'm just gonna press it over to the side, making sure all those points are where I want them to be, and it looks pretty good. We don't want to be too perfectionist about it, but it is nice to have those perfect points when possible. All that we have left now is the top and the bottom, and we'll be done. So go ahead and get your row. Make sure it's going the right direction. Looks good. And then we're going to pin starting in the middle all the way out to the outside. This is why it's very important to square up your blocks as you go so that everything will nest and fit together correctly. This is also why we ironed this seam in and this seam going out so that we can nest those and get those exactly perfect. All right, let's flip it to the other side and pin the other one on. Just double check it's going the right direction. You don't want to pin them upside down. Looks good. Okay, let's go take it to the sewing machine. And here is where I will do a little bit of a back stitch to help secure that edge. And it helps to get as much of the fabric up on your lap or on the side of your table as you can to keep the weight from pulling out of the sewing machine. And also securing it at the end by back stitching. Now we can flip it around and do the other side. Now I'm just going to iron this out towards the outside blocks. To make it easy, you can open the seam if you would like. It's nice to see it though as I'm going to see if my points are matching up. So far it looks really good. Let's see the other side. Congratulations, you made the Aunt Rachel's Quilt Star block. Great job! Look at how awesome all those points turned out. I love it. Now you have a perfect table topper or wall hanging to enjoy and remember Journey Back Quilts by. Hey, thanks so much for joining me today in making my Aunt Rachel's Quilt Star block. I hope that you enjoyed that and you turned simple, basic blocks into a very advanced or maybe intermediate quilt. And now you can enjoy it. So if you would like help long arming this quilt or finishing it up, I would love to help you do that. Just reach out to us anyway, email, social media, all the things. And if you would like more tips, tricks, and tutorials, we have a library full of them in our Journey Back Quilts Sewciety. There you'll get all those videos, plus a 10% discount on products and services, and a quilting community from all around the world that you'll be able to connect with. Okay, next week we start our next series on flying geese blocks. I'll see you then.